Can you feel it? If you think all that's happening right now would be happening if she was in the White House, think again. Rats are fleeing the sinking ship. Patriots are rising. Truth is being dispensed nationwide like never before. And even terrorists in Saudi Arabia are being purged.
Would you believe that Hillary Clinton is still blaming Russia for her loss of the 2016 presidential election? Of course, you would, but you may be surprised at just how hyperbolic it has become. Hillary Clinton compared alleged Russian interference in the 2016 election to the September 11 attacks a few months ago. We had really well-respected security, intelligence veterans saying this was a cyber 9/11, in the sense it was a direct attack on our institutions, Clinton claimed. That may sound dramatic, but we know that they probed and tried to intrude into election systems, not just the social media propaganda part of their campaign. This is an ongoing threat, she declared, adding that the Russians are not done. Well, that's one insanely insensitive way to blame the American public for your loss, essentially claiming that everyone who voted against you was a victim of a cyber 9/11. It's mainly funny given that Hillary Clinton is accusing the Russians of conspiring against her when she had no problem plotting with them just over a half-decade ago. Hillary wasn't comparing the Russians to Al-Qaeda when they were giving her money. How could she, and why would she? As we've covered in previous articles, the Clinton family has allegedly played a significant role in the Uranium One deal, which has now become the subject of scandal due to the circumstances surrounding the issue. The Uranium One deal allowed 20% of the United States uranium reserves to be awarded to a firm with Russian interests. The deal made little sense and was potentially responsible for weakening national security. In fact, the deal only makes sense because the Clinton Foundation received kickbacks from Russian donors around the approximate time the deal happened. There's also claims that Bill Clinton gave a speech to a Russian bank in Moscow and somehow earned $500,000 for his time. Is that the going rate for a short speech to another country? That was back in 2010, but now the heat is finally turning up on the Clinton brigade. All eyes will be watching closely to see what comes up next since the lid blew off the uranium scandal. Some Republicans have called for an investigation, and they got their wish. Now, things are getting serious. According to NBC News, on the orders of Attorney General Jeff Sessions, Justice Department prosecutors have begun asking FBI agents to explain the evidence they found in a now dormant criminal investigation into a controversial uranium deal that critics have linked to Bill and Hillary Clinton, multiple law enforcement officials told NBC News. The interviews with FBI agents are part of the Justice Department's effort to fulfill a promise an Assistant Attorney General made to Congress last month to examine whether a special counsel was warranted to look into what has become known as the Uranium One deal, a senior Justice Department official said. At issue is a 2010 transaction in which the Obama administration allowed the sale of U.S. uranium mining facilities to Russia's state atomic energy company. Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State at the time, and the State Department was one of 9 agencies that agreed to approve the deal after finding no threat to U.S. national security. A senior law enforcement official who was briefed on the initial FBI investigation told NBC News there were allegations of corruption surrounding the process under which the U.S. government approved the sale. But no charges were filed. In recent weeks, FBI agents who investigated the case have been asked by Justice Department prosecutors to describe the results of their probe. The agents also have been asked if there was any improper effort to squash a prosecution, the law enforcement sources say. The senior Justice Department official said the questions were part of an effort by the Sessions team to get up to speed on the controversial case, in the face of allegations from congressional Republicans that it was mishandled. According to one legal analyst, there are at least 13 crimes Hillary could be charged with for her alleged involvement in the scandalous deal. Of course, this is Hillary Clinton we're talking about. She's had far more than 13 scandals under her lengthy career, and nothing too intense has ever happened with those. Is it time for Hillary Clinton to be brought to justice? Justice defeating the Clinton Armada and tax reform would be the achievement of a lifetime and potentially the reason Trump wins in 2020 if he decides to run for re-election.
President Trump weighing in on Twitter again this morning about protests erupting across Iran, saying in part that, quote, the USA is watching very closely for human rights violations. Here for a fair and balanced debate on this is radio talk show hosts Josh Kimbrell and Garland Nixon. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with me this afternoon. We're talking about Iran at the end of 2017. Not really a surprise. It's been a common thread throughout the course of the last year. But these protests are newly erupted and seem to be growing by the hour. I want to get both of you your take on. So the president has tweeted 3 times now about this, I believe, which absolutely elevates the profile of these protests, not just here in America, but in Iran as well. What are U.S. strategic objectives? Garland, I'm going to give you a chance to answer that first. What do we hope to get out of taking a side?
Well, you know, I think the main thing that we can hope to get out of there is a stable government. If things, you know, there are a lot of people cheering for regime change, but they wouldn't be happy if we had like regime change and Hezbollah became the new government. So you want a stable government. I do think that the U.S. needs to stay as far away as they can from this, because when you have a government in the Middle East that is in trouble, the one thing they want is to be able to blame it on the United States and not have to discuss the issue of what their true problems.
The United States government always the scapegoat of choice for countries in the Middle East. We have to point out, Josh.
They're going to be the scapegoat of choice at any rate, though. I mean, when you look at this, in my view, this is an opportunity to reset the P5+1, the Iranian nuclear agreement from the Obama era, because it clearly demonstrates the fact they've killed multiple protesters now. We're dealing with a rogue regime. We're dealing with a regime that could care less about human rights. We're dealing with a regime that even with the $1.7 billion cash payment the Obama administration made to them in pursuit of this nuclear deal and the release of hostages, has funded terrorism with it. These protests we are witnessing are because of economic pressure on the people of Iran. Well, the sanctions relief ostensibly was supposed to help the people of Iran overcome some of that pressure, and of course the government's not done that. This is a chance for us to push back and say the Iran nuclear deal was a mistake. We need to reintroduce sanctions. I think we need to push for a better deal or scrap it all together. And frankly, the president did the right thing by siding with the protesters. We should do that. I think the United States aggressively should support change in the Iranian government.
Okay, so Garland, Josh picks out an important thread. There was a lot in that answer, but one thing I want to pick out in particular is the idea that the fact that these protests are going on today is evidence in and of itself that the Iran nuclear deal failed to achieve its objectives of one of its core objectives, which was to have, when sanctions were lifted, the billions of dollars that were opened up and Iran was now able to sell oil on the international market, some of that revenue was supposed to be steered toward the Iranian people. So the fact that it's not making its way to them, that the regime still has such a close hold on these profits, is evidence of failures in the nuclear deal itself. What do you say to that?
Well, I think we've got to be wary of taking that position, because let's not forget that within the Iranian government, there was some pushback against the deal by hardliners in the government. Where there wasn't pushback was amongst the people. The people of Iran were dancing in the streets over the deal because they wanted sanction relief. So right now, if the government takes a position that it's a bad deal, they're actually opposing what these particular protesters have argued for the reason you said. They saw it as a way to get economic relief. But
it was never designed.
That never happened.
It was never designed.
That didn't happen. I mean, the point is,
but was it? I guess the question then, Josh, is: was it designed to do that, or was that just a convenient side effect that the Iranian people were sort of led to believe would come on the heels of this?
Well, the Rouhani regime basically had to sell it that way because the hardline clerics were, ostensibly opposed to any discussion with the United States. Of course, we found out the UK Telegraph was reporting that even back in 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini was in conversations with the Carter administration. So the idea the Ayatollahs have never talked to the United States when it's convenient is sort of laughable. But the Rouhani regime sold this to the Iranian people and to the hardliners as saying we're going to get economic relief for the people of Iran. Now, they also, in lots of communications we heard about behind the scenes, said, well, we're really never going to abandon our nuclear program. And I think there's 2 problems here. One is they had no intentions of ever helping their people overcome the abject poverty they're stuck in because of a tyrannical regime. Number 2, they never have any intentions of abandoning in whole their nuclear ambitions. And those are not peaceful nuclear ambitions. I mean, they have openly said they want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth and make America's streets run with blood. Back where I'm from in South Carolina, when your neighbor threatens to kill you, you don't give him time to get a gun. You try to find a way to stop the weapons program. And I think this is the time to push the the reset button and say that we need to revisit this Iran nuclear deal.
All right, well, gentlemen, we've got to leave it there, but we'll keep our eye on these protests over the coming week, and hopefully we'll have you back to weigh in with maybe there'll be some positive developments. We'll
Thank
be
you.
reporting
Thank
on
you.
that.
Happy New Year.